Hi, I'm Latrina Robert, and today we're going to talk about Black Wall Street. Black Wall Street was located in Tulsa, Oklahoma. It was known as the most prosperous community overflowing with African Americans. This community dated back as early as 1906. It was founded by O.W. Gurley, who was a rich African American, and he had moved from Arkansas to Tulsa, Oklahoma, where he purchased 40 acres of land. The purchased land was made only to be sold to African Americans. This was done to help the African Americans escape the oppression of Mississippi and other southern states. Within Greenwood's district, Black Wall Street was filled with businesses such as hotels, banks, cafes, and more. All these companies and establishments were locally owned by African Americans. Black Wall Street was home to over 9,000 African Americans. The year 1921 was a wave of racial violence flooded Black Wall Street. The community was described as an affluent community and appeared as a threat of those labeled white-dominated capitalism. On May 31st, the leading newspaper of the area, Tulsa Tribune, reported that a black man named Dick Rowland attempted to rape a white lady named Sarah Page in the elevator. During the time, the newspapers influenced everyday life heavily, such as how social media does ours nowadays. The phrase, "take it and run with it," was what it was. This incident outraged white people. Despite a proper investigation being done by local authorities, outraged white people chose to take matters in their own hand. Later reports mentioned that the 19-year-old Rowland tripped and fell into the elevator and his hand accidentally caught Mrs. Page's shoulder. No prompt verdict of whether Dick Rowland was guilty or that Sarah Page had simply framed him still had led to mischief. Outside the courthouse stood both armed whites and blacks. Whites stood armed and insisted that the subject be hanged immediately. Arguments led to fights, and fights led to killings. The blacks were outnumbered and retreated to their community, Black Wall Street. The whites were even more outraged and followed them back to their well-known community. This was the birth of the Tulsa Race Massacre of 1921. The whites wreaked havoc. The whites began to destroy their community into pieces, burning promising businesses that had brought so much income down to the very ground that they stood on, burning homes with families still in them, looting any structures they possibly could. Aircraft were used to survey the area. They took airplanes and flew over the community of Black Wall Street to make sure that every inch had been touched. This incident was better described as almost as if the aircraft made the sky rain bullets and inflammables all over Black Wall Street. The damage that this caused was devastating. What was once home to so many was no more. 9,000 African Americans were now homeless. Estimates of 55 to more than 300 black people were killed, and 1,000 homes and businesses destroyed to the ground. Those that weren't killed had fled during the incident, or those that had chose to stay were eventually caught and detained by the national troops and the policemen. The survivors of Black Wall Street were only left with memories of what was once a prospering community and home. Black Wall Street was simply burned down and swept over. It was said for the longest that the massacre had very few mentions within any articles. The whites had officially done all they could to make sure that they erased Black Wall Street. It was later evidence that all research that was being done on the incident was erased, or those that had evidence were threatened. Oklahoma's leading newspapers even went beyond to not mention the incident as well. Tulsa's chief of police had ordered all his officers to go to every photography studio in the area that was known to have been there during the event and confiscate all of the photos that were taken. Modern-day activists and researchers are still trying to piece together what those who should be punished try to erase from history. Black Wall Street is still uprising. The 1921 Tulsa Race Massacre Centennial Commission is a group of those committed to uncovering the incident and helping the community rise from the past. Their goal is to leverage the rich history surrounding the 1921 Tulsa Race Massacre by facilitating actions, activities, and events and educate all citizens of Tulsa, home of the Greenwood Rising, which is a history center in the Greenwood District. It hosts the Greenwood Art Project, which brings forth artists and awareness of the Black Wall Street history, focusing on the Tulsa Race Massacre. The art project is very beneficial and is used as a way to heal the community from its history, to promote rebuilding, and to promote recultivating within the district. Despite solid proof that 1921 Tulsa Race Massacre did occur, no one that played a role in the crucial acts have been held accountable. As the year of 2021, at least 3 survivors, all in the age of 100s and above, are still alive. Some are able to still describe the very attack and the encounter and testify on behalf of those victims. The 1921 Tulsa Race Massacre was one of the most hate crimes in history. However, as a nation, we still have work to do. Tulsa is still trying to recover from unfair and unjust treatment. Its leaders and representatives still are corrupt. Official representatives requesting that the massacre only be a thing of the past and left in the past. Tulsa present citizens now coming together stronger than ever to remove those corrupt officials from their positions one at a time. Although we do not live in a world of segregation, sadly, racism still exists. Racial hate crimes still exist. Injustice of African Americans still exists. However, one at a time, those who choose to be racist shall surface. Those who attempt to erase Black Wall Street will be erased their very selves.